experience as a former member of the King Singers, a former chorister at Westminster Abbey, and director of Ballet Cantus, and there's many, many great, exciting things in the choral world. So I'm very excited to hear what he's going to share with us, and I hope you all gain something of great value. Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. See old friends and new faces alike. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So I'm aware of the things that you've been doing over the course of your hours in this institute so far, and very happy to kind of to pull you into a slight left turn into the kind of unconducted world of singing. But what's interesting about it, of course, is that we're all thinking about this notion of musical leadership, and when you sing in a small ensemble, or for reasons that we might go into just a little bit in terms of how it can be advantageous, but when you sing in a small ensemble, that move into a space which is not led by an individual, but is led by consensus to an extent, consensual democracy, or whatever process you find in your ensemble that works for you. That process gives everybody an opportunity to step into some kind of leadership role, a role that which would normally reflect the personality of the individual and the kind of collective personality of the group. But doing this as a small ensemble, I think requires us to pay some attention to some of the component parts of what makes ensemble singing special and unique and different from choral singing. And I thought that I'd just delve into that a little bit with you now. And then maybe after that we might just extract one or two of you, or three or four of you to be precise, to become a kind of model ensemble, and then expand that into a slightly larger ensemble where I think those of you who are newer to this whole singing thing, and just so that I can begin to get my bearings here, if you're one of the conducting fellows, could you just put your hand up just so I can start? Right. Well, okay. Well, I know that at least one of you knows quite a lot about singing already, but I expect lots of you do. But that's useful for me to have. Thank you very much. So, how to begin this? Peter mentioned that I used to sing in this group with the King Singers, and I don't want to dwell unnecessarily long on that. They're just an a cappella group, in a fairly large universe of a cappella groups, and they have a special way of doing things, and lots of groups have special ways of doing things. But I think I have an anecdote for you from my time in that group that I think is edifying in a universal way as we approach ensemble singing, and it's actually my first encounter with the group. So I auditioned for the King Singers when I was very, very young, and that's just a matter of luck. The right person left the group at the right time, with a voice that was in a similar register to mine, and I was perhaps on a list of people who might possibly be appropriate for that position. But I was 21 when that happened, and I didn't take I didn't really take the offer of an audition terribly seriously. To be honest, I didn't even know that the King Singers still existed because they had so little presence in the United Kingdom. So I'd known the group when I was a kid, and I really did adore all of those silly arrangements that I'd heard a lot in my parents' record collection. But I actually didn't know the group still existed because its career was almost exclusively in Germany for half the year and in the United States for half the year. So didn't come across my sphere at all. So I agreed to go into this audition, and I went along, and I immediately thought, well, I'm 20 years younger than everyone in this room. This is ridiculous, and I was a pretty kind of sloppy 21-year-old as well. And I was actually still, to be honest, I was kind of being dragged kicking and screaming into a music career because it was obvious to everyone but me that I was a musician, but I was still at that point where you don't get to tell me what I am, and I was like, I'm a diplomat or something, I mean anything. I wanted to be something else still at that point. But so I went into this audition room with them, really going, what is this? Like, who are these people? What am I being asked to do here? And the other thing that you may not know about me is that I'm a string player. I'm from a family of string players. I'm not a good string player, but I am a string player, and I grew up as a violinist, and that's the world always hoped that I would be a violinist, but I defied the world by being quite bad at the violin. But I have a kind of string player's instincts to me. So it doesn't matter what this first piece that I sang with the King Singers was, but just for reference, it was by a Spanish Renaissance composer called Juan Vasquez, and it was a villancico called Gentil Señora Mía. And from the very, very first second that I started singing with them, I became suddenly and acutely aware of a whole world of ensemble skills, like music-making techniques, that I'd never encountered before. And as Peter said, I was fortunate enough to be sent to this rather famous choir school when I was 8 years old, and the Western Traffic Choir was definitely a good musical education for me. And then after that, I went to Trinity College, Cambridge, and that's also a half decent choir. And so I had a lot of pretty good experiences when I was growing up, but nothing prepared me for this. And the things that I noticed immediately were that breath was fundamental to everything that the group did. So obviously, if you've spent 5 minutes with Dr. Jordan, you'll know that a singer's breath is a fundamental part of a singer's weaponry, and it's absolutely it goes hand in hand with what we as conductors try to do. It goes hand in hand with what string players do, of course, wind instrumentalists, but singers not just as the kind of vehicle upon which our voice sits, but also as a communication tool. The breath is at the heart of everything that this vocal ensemble did, and it hit me absolutely like a train. The second thing was that I was aware that I was being listened to, and I mean that in almost, it was almost an imposition. It was almost made me uncomfortable. We were standing in a semicircle of 6, and I could feel that, Steve Connolly, who was standing to my left, was going, he was really going, what are you doing? What are you doing? And, he was, definitely not looking at me, but listening to me. And that was happening down the line as well. I was conscious that all five of these singers had their ears really acutely trained on what I was doing. It made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but I got used to it. We'll go into that in a bit more depth. And then the third thing I noticed was the sound. And I realized, those of us who are singers, our voices, some of us are quite protective of our vocal instruments. Our vocal technique is something that we grow very carefully and proudly, painstakingly over a long period of time. We invest a lot of money in our voice lessons and a lot of time, and we practice hard as singers. This vocal instrument that we grow is precious to us, and I think a reasonable first instinct when you come to an ensemble is going, well, okay, here I am, I'm bringing my voice. This is my voice, and the person next to me is bringing their voice, and the person next to them is bringing their voice, and let's see what happens. What I noticed in this experience, and I'm talking about a process that lasted about 90 seconds of complete illumination, was that the sound in this ensemble was minutely and definitively and thoughtfully mutating all the time in response to what they were hearing. So I think because I then spent the next 8 years stood next to this extraordinary bass singer called Steve Connolly, who, I don't know if that name means anything to anybody, he was bass in the King Singers for about 18 years, and he was he was, as a young singer, he was in the same studio as Princeton at Guildhall School of Music as a student of Rudolf Pianet. Pianet was said in those days that he had these two great bass baritone students, but the one he really had high hopes for was Steve Connolly, and Bryn Terfel was his other one. So we're talking about a singer of some power, but who unfortunately for him, he grew up an absolutely incurable King Singers fan. He had posters all up over his walls as a kid, and all he really wanted to do was sing in the King Singers. So he kind of taught himself to sing lower and lower and lower by the precise application of mostly alcohol and tobacco, basically. So we're talking about, this is like a real 1980s approach to refining vocal technique. But so I stood next to him for 8 years, and I was constantly conscious that every sound that came out of my mouth had a consequence, in terms of the sound that he made. And he taught me over that time to kind of to feel like the sound I was making was kind of leaving my body and entering his, and then somehow leaving his mouth. And the same thing would happen. I would try to become part of the resonating space for his voice. I felt like if I kind of did a certain thing with my head or with my mouth or whatever, that it would actually have an effect on his voice, not just on mine. That's metaphysical, sort of, it's BS. But it's a mindset. It signifies just how kind of devoted we were to each other's sound, and so that requires a flexibility in sound production, which is frankly an uncomfortable thing for those of us who are, who have a vocal instrument that we treasure. For whom, those of us who have a way of singing that we've worked so hard to build, to actually become more flexible with that, it takes a refinement of mindset. It's difficult. So I just want to kind of live with these three things a little bit longer: breath, listening, and sound. Just give you a few more little ideas that I've picked up over the years that I just to sort of amplify what I've just said. So breath, first of all. Obviously, in the ensembles that you're working with this week, you're working with conductors. We're here because of a pursuit of that craft, and it makes sense. I would assume that that the smaller the ensemble gets, the less and less need there might be for a conductor. Does that make sense to everybody in the room? And you can sort of, it's difficult to explain why, but it's obvious why, right? So if you're singing in a small ensemble, it can still have the leadership of one person, right? I mean, have you seen small ensembles being led by an individual? Yeah, and how, in your experience, how has that individual led the ensemble? How physically has that happened? Right. So standing in the group, standing in the middle of the group,
or on the end.
Standing on the end of the group. So this is the centre of the student a cappella universe. This campus, there are 15 student a cappella groups on this campus, and I watch them quite a lot, and there's a lot to admire about a lot of them, but generally speaking, conducting is not one of them. There's a Princeton a cappella school of conducting. I don't know where it's written down, but it's obviously written down somewhere, because they all do this. It's like some kind of weird 16th century seed drill. They just stand at the end and they maybe there's a click there or something, but it's a kind of an up-down thing like that. And there's not a great deal of art in that. I mean, they rehearse enough to be able to kind of. I can't understate how good some of these a cappella groups are, but it's not because of the conducting. But it is obviously because of the rehearsing and the thought and all that. But one of the things that happens as a result of one person standing on the end of a group going like this. Well, I mean, you tell me what's happening now. You're all looking at me, right? So our slightly young, we will be 22 voice or however many people are in this room. On vocal ensemble is all now quite lopsided, isn't it? Right? I mean, none of you are singing to the people who've paid to come and see you. You're all singing to me. You see that? Maybe if I stood in the middle of you, that's a different sort of dynamic. At least we're all kind of working towards the centre of the ensemble. But again, it feels like the attention is all kind of drawn towards one individual. I will confess to you, Peter mentioned I also lead an ensemble now called Gallicantus. Quite often when we're doing 5, 6, 7 voice ensemble performances, I will quite often stand in the middle of the group and conduct a little bit. And I have found I don't like it, but I like it more than standing on the end, because I just feel that for the energy of the group, I think it's a more healthy thing for us all to be kind of working into the middle of the ensemble than leaning towards the outside edge all the time. But if we could all agree that conducting in a small ensemble context is kind of imperfect, then we can start to see that the tools we have for communicating without a conductor are what? What are our communication tools without a conductor in a small ensemble?
Breath.
Our breath. Yeah, but you know that because I said it already. But if I hadn't said breath before, what would the first thing you said have been?
Eyebrows.
Eyes. Right. Yeah. And how often have you seen that? You see ensembles just kind of checking in with each other all the time. Who went to Westminster Choir College here? Right. So this is something that I've seen with choirs at Westminster. There's a culture at Westminster of kind of eye contact within the choir, right? I mean, there's a lot of sort of which in a core sense it's satisfying and creates a sense of camaraderie and of musical connection within the ensemble, which I think it's unique to Westminster as far as I'm concerned, and it was jarring for me when I first saw it, but I came to understand it and love it actually. But I think but it's not deployed in order to keep everyone together in a musical sense. I feel like it's more deployed to keep them together in a kind of a tonal sense and in that kind of in that kind of spiritual affirmation of what we're doing together. But I would contend that in a small ensemble, eye contact it can work, but because you're relying on cues which are open to interpretation and which also rely on specific moments of things happening, I would always encourage a vocal ensemble to let go of the need for eye contact and instead to develop their other senses, so that as a performer you can never lose your focus on what is most important as an ensemble, which is the unified direction of your art, which is the sense that we are a 5, 6, 7 limbed animal, and we are all directing our energies in one place. We are not looking to one person for confirmation of, are we going now? Right, okay, go. We're not looking for that. We are feeling that moment in the room when the room is ready for music, and we do this through breath. So people used to ask, the King Singers after concerts all the time, like, how do you start? Don't see anyone conducting, and how do you? And the answer to that question is we just breathe and sing. And you might be surprised by how easy it is actually to breathe and sing. So I'm going to ask you to sit at the front of your chairs now. Just kind of sit in an engaged way, just kind of engage your pause as you sing. And just get some experience of this process. So what we're going to do is we're going to communally recognize that moment when the room is ready for sound. And when we communally recognize that moment, we're going to breathe and we're going to say, ah. We're going to do it with our eyes closed. All right? Now, just before you do that, just focus on these things that we're doing at this point. So you'll notice when you close your eyes and when you just use your ears, you'll notice that we'll all take our own sweet time just to kind of wind down and make ourselves still. And there will be a moment when the room is perfectly still. And when that happens, you have to bravely take that moment and breathe in a committed way and just say, all right? So let's just try that. Just kind of disengage for a moment, just relax for a moment, and then let's re-engage, find that silence, breathe. Did you feel it? There was near silence and then there was total silence. And I would still say that there was still an element of hesitation in the room, and the other point of hesitation which you need to work past is that kind of that change from potential into kinetic energy at the top of your breath. What you can't do is breathe, tense, wait, and go. You just breathe, go. And remember, it's much more difficult for a room this size than it is for a group of 4 or 5 or 6. It's actually really easy as long as you all share that courageous moment of just breathing and saying So let's just do it once again. Just kind of just work out some kind of personal trouble, and then here we go. You feel it? Silence is a remarkable thing, isn't it? Do you all notice that point, that difference between near silence and total silence? And then that silence almost becomes loud. It almost becomes oppressive. Like I have to breathe into this silence now. It's almost like a vacuum that's kind of pulling the air out of me. It's a remarkable thing. So we'll do this a bit more when we I'm going to pull a quartet of you up here in just a moment, and then we'll add more of you to that and see how we can get on in the context of actual music making. All right. So that's breath. Let's also remember. I think something I remember from Professor Jordan's many books about conducting. Beginning with his first edition of Evoking Sound, which I still teach conducting using. Thank you. The character, the potential character that's inherent in the preparatory gesture for a conductor. Have you covered? Is anyone prepared to kind of to tell me what can be communicated in a really good preparatory gesture, as according to Professor Jordan? What's in a preparatory gesture for a conductor? What can be in it? If it's yeah, for sure. Yeah. What else?
Style.
Yeah. Can you be more specific? Dynamic. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Keep going. I don't want any wrong answers. Just
Sound you want?
Yeah, absolutely. Colour, for sure. I like style, but I think character, energy, those sorts of things. All right. So pace, the colour of the sound, it can all be expressed in that preparatory gesture, right? Whether it's this, whether it's this, whether it's this, whether it's this, there's so much that you can put into a preparatory gesture. Can you also take on the possibility that all of these things can also be in breath? All right. So as ensemble singers, the more you can be attuned to the character of each other's breath, the more that you can affirm to each other in the process of that breath what this sound needs to be. I could always tell what sound Steve Connolly was going to be making by the physicality of his breath next to me. Sometimes I would feel like his thighs were expanding as he breathed. That process of breathing, you can feel it through the body of your neighbour. Sort of expanding to fill the space around you. The breath can be light and fluffy or menacing, or it can be soulful. It can be guttural. It can be gritty. It can have all sorts of character specifics that inform the sound that's about to follow. And, and through just a little bit of experimentation and, and experiential work in that breath, you can learn such a lot from it, about how to make interesting sounds as an ensemble. Okay, so let's just move forward to listening now. So listening in an ensemble is everything. I mean, it is. I think that your mental energy in an ensemble setting needs to be 80% devoted to listening and only 20% devoted to singing. Of course, like what you're doing as a singer is important, but and your own personal voice and vocal technique is important, but it's only important in the context of the sound that's around you. Good listening is the difference between good intonation and beautiful intonation. Do you know what I mean by beautiful intonation? Yeah? The kind of intonation that doesn't just match what a piano can do, it exceeds what a piano can do. And you understand scientifically how that's possible, right? Beautiful intonation is the kind of thing that excites a room, that makes glass shudder. Good intonation is what a piano can do. Beautiful intonation is what a vocal ensemble can do with that really advanced listening. I wanted to say something about a word that I'm very suspicious of, which is blend. Because I think we get very stuck on that word, and I do feel I'm still a bit of a stranger in these lands, as you can tell. I can't quite shake the accent I was born with, but I'm aware that I come from a place where people in choral music on this side of the Atlantic tend to think that this sound, aspirational sound in choral music somehow lives in the United Kingdom, and if that's not the belief here, then I would encourage you to keep that belief, because I don't think the aspirational choral, the perfect global choral sound lives in the United Kingdom or in Sweden or Latvia or anywhere. It may. I prefer to think that it lives here, just because why not be optimistic? But to the extent that British choirs are good, and they are, they're not good because everyone sings with zero vibrato. They're not good because everyone is taught by the same voice teacher to make exactly the same vowel or exactly the same, anything. They're good because there is, in the right circumstances, and only in the right circumstances in the UK, there is an environment where people grow up in a culture of listening to each other, where one's vocal technique is important, but it's only important in the context of what's going on around. That flexibility in your vocal technique is supremely important. I'll get a bit more deep into that in just a second. But listening and responding to the sounds around you is the thing that makes choirs sound good. And to use that imperfect word, have a blend that we appreciate. In actual fact, if you were to listen very closely, if you were to walk through a British choir that you considered to have a nice blend, even if you were to just walk down the Tallis scholars, even the Tallis scholars, and that's a particularly pristine sound, you would hear lots and lots of grain and grit and vibrato, and what you would call extreme vocal colour, especially in the lower voices, but not only in the lower voices. It's that's an ensemble that I've sung 2 Tallis scholars gigs in my life, and it was a burning ambition of mine when I was 17 years old, and it never actually worked out. And then but funnily enough, in 2019 I did 2 gigs with them, and it was was a shattering, physically shattering experience, because I had no, I had no idea how physically hard they work, how much kind of commitment and full body they sing. Kind of blanding your voice, removing all of the character of your voice so that it's as as vanilla as possible is not the solution here. And I want to make that, for those of you who are going to be leading community or church, youth, or whatever choirs in the future, you owe it to your singers to do more for them than to strip their voices of everything that makes them individual and end up with a kind of lowest common denominator of sound that has no life to it, but is inoffensive to your ears, right? You owe it to them to give them more as a singer, because a beautiful choral sound, what we might call a blended sound, is far more complicated than that, and there's no, I don't think that there is any hard and fast recipe for that sound. It's more sophisticated than that and needs harder work. But I think it's much more a matter of just of learning as much as you can about your voice, of learning as much as you can about the voices around you, and just feeling where it happens. Of just, it doesn't, vibrato need not be a destroyer of a choral sound. It's not even necessarily a requirement that vibratos, the more that they can line up in terms of frequency, the better. I mean, I don't quite know why. I don't know why, but I just know that there is more to it than that. That listening, that feeling the voice of a neighbour through yours, and feeling your voice through a neighbour's, leads to things that are quite special and quite unique, and are kind of alchemic in the way that they happen. And if you work to just kind of strip the voice down to its component parts until you have basically nothing, no character to work with, just the kind of a fluty organ-like tone, you're not doing justice to the music, to yourself, to the singers that you're working with, to the potential for great art. Okay. All right. So that's listening, and then I've moved a little bit into sound. In the process of saying that, so it might be, just looking at the clock, it might be a good idea if we actually do a little bit of singing. Although, maybe before we do that, I'd just like to just talk for a second about what happens after that as well. I don't know whether any of you are in a small vocal ensemble, or whether you have any ambitions to be in a small vocal ensemble, a conductorless ensemble, but I think it's just worth, seeing as we're in this world for this hour and a half, let's just stay here and talk for a second about what's out there for a vocal ensemble, because, what's the point? What's the point? I mean, we can't kid ourselves. This is a pretty rarefied world. There are some groups out there who make a living as small vocal ensembles, aren't there, right? Okay, we've already mentioned the King Singers. There's, who else? Yeah, Cantus, yeah, and there's Chanticleer, right? There's Voces, right? Talis Scholars, yeah, well, Talis Scholars do have a conductor. So I would say that Talis, it's not always entirely clear to me what he does, but they do have a conductor. I'd say that to his face. So in a way, and Talis Scholars is really a small choir, I think. But yes, there is a small rarefied world out there for small conductorless vocal ensembles. And Dreswado 6 is another one if you've come across them, although Owen Park conducts them quite a lot as well.
It's also there's also plenty in the US. The Barbershop Harmony Association, Sweet Adelines, there's Harm in University, which which does training camps in a cappella ensemble and barbershop singing.
Right,
Which
and then
is-
there's Roomful of Tea,
Mhm.
and then there's that group in Philadelphia that Jimmy Reed started that I can't remember, the something six.
Variant 6.
Variant six, that's it, yeah. Yeah, yes, oh gosh.
I love barbershop.
Well, I'm yes. I'm remembering Sweet Adeline's conventions that I used to sing at sometimes. I remember one in a stadium in Nashville. There were 20,000 female a cappella singers in the stadium. And I've never seen so much polyester in all my life.
Was that at the Royal Albert Hall in the 70s?
No, it was in Nashville.
Nashville.
It was in Nashville, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so you know, within a kind of rarefied universe, there is a world to be explored out there for an ensemble. I would just say that supremely important as it is, everything that I've just said about about your technique as an ensemble, your breath, you know, the way that you communicate, the sound that you make, your approach to sound, the way that you're prepared to kind of lay down your own voice in the service of the other voices, you know, through listening. All those things are supremely important, but actually what's most important of all as an ensemble is that you know why you exist. It has to be more than you enjoy singing with you know, as an amateur group, as a barbershop group, then fine. But as a professional barbershop or a cappella group, you have to know why you exist. What is the repertoire you live for, and what is the point? What is the reason for you forming in order to sing this? What do you have to say with this repertoire? And I think the reason why it's important just to think about this is it's very similar actually to one of the key components of learning to be a conductor. Because you know, something that I would say to a young conductor is you have to somehow bridge that line between being humble enough to convince yourself that you are in the service of the singers in front of you, that you know that when it's good, it's to their credit, and when it's bad, it's your fault. You know what I mean? That you are in the service of the musicians in front of you. You have that humility intrinsic in you as a conductor. I think that's important. But at the same time, you have to have enough about you, enough confidence about you to know that you're not wasting their time. All right, that you're on the podium in order to say something that's significant and that will actually create a nourishing experience in the room. That you know that it's worth sitting there and singing for you. And that's difficult, you know, to have both that confidence and that humility simultaneously, as you know, as we're all kind of evolving as human beings right up until the day we die. That's not easy, and I think that's the same, but in a collective sense for an ensemble. You have to be sufficiently mute as an individual in order for the collective to prosper, but also as a collective you have to know why it is that you exist and what it is you have to say about what music to whom, so that you can be clear. I mean, I think you know, if I were to put this in a sort of corporate American language, you have to know what your mission is, right? So I think you know that's the final step of what being an ensemble takes out of you, and what the point of all of this work in breath and listening and sound. All of that work goes towards if you work all that stuff out and then you want to take it into a performing sphere, you have to be clear what the mission is. All right, good. So. Can we just put some of this stuff into practice now? So we talked about maybe 4 singers. Yeah. Do they already know who they are?
They do.
So who are those 4? Okay, great. Could you just come up to the front?
Should we bring
Bring your tallis if you love me. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right, so let's go soprano, alto, tenor, bass. All right. Okay, good. So, would you just humour us just by closing your eyes and breathing and saying "ah" a couple of times? Great. Do it again.
Ah.
Everybody, are you noticing how physical their breath is? Can you just, as you breathe this time, can you be conscious? Can you consciously try to move the air around you with your bodies? Try to take into yourselves the power to actually move air around your body. All right?
Ah.
Okay. You don't need to be fierce, and you don't need to do what I can't remember what that kind of breathing you do in yoga is when you go. You don't need to do that. All right. Just let, as you would in your voice lessons, just let the air drop into your body, but try to be physical as your body expands to fill the space.
Ah.
One more thing. Disengage before you engage. So if we're too tense before we start, then there's not enough flexibility to either receive or give a message. You know what I mean? So disengage, feel the silence, engage, breathe, and say ah.
Ah.
That's convincing to me. To you? You know it's good when you can't tell who's leading it. Right? You know it's good when you can't tell who's leading it. Can you just do it one more time? Disengage.
Ah.
That's pretty convincing to me. Would you say? Good. All right. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I'm just going to now just give you a little ensemble warm up. All right. So now that you're here, so one of the things that we can do to embed this idea of listening to each other is force ourselves to do it. Is to create warm ups where we have no choice but to respond to exactly what our neighbour is doing. So one way that I've started to use with my students, we have a vocal consult minor here, and so I have 8 students who are in that minor. One of the things that I ask them to do is I ask them in their quartet or sextet or octet, whatever they're in, I will ask one of them to select a pitch and select a vowel entirely of their choosing, and then I will ask the other singers to build a chord around that. Now, let's start with the bass, all right? So the way we're just going to build a simple 4-part chord, and we'll have a root, and a fifth, and an octave, and a tenth. So, all right? So a root, a fifth, an octave, and a tenth. And what we're going to do is we'll just do this 4 times, and we'll ask each of the 4 singers to be the root of the chord. So you'll select a vowel and a pitch, and then you'll sing a fifth above it, and that exact vowel, you can, whatever vowels from whatever kind of language, cultural tradition you know, just use. It doesn't need to be a pure vowel, it can be anything, right? Any vowel, any pitch, try to make it something that's in the register that we need, right? So root position first. Sorry. Would you mind? I think for spacing, would you go an octave lower? Good. All right. I don't want to dwell too long on this. That's fine. Just listen to the specific characteristics of the vowel. Take in everything, all the information you possibly can about how that sound is being made, and then just experiment with your own voice to make sure that it feels like it's kind of working in a fun way with the voice that's next to you. All right. So you're going to sing now. Just choose any note, any vowel. And it's going to be the root of the chord, all right? So you're going to sing the fifth of the chord.
So we got the chord number.
Yeah. You're going to sing the octave of the chord, and then you're now going to sing. You're then going to sing a third somewhere. Okay? So let's just try that. mean, I'm not even sure what vowel that was. You know, somebody did an R and an R, but actually the four of them, you know, did a fantastic job to make it all match. All right, so root position. Fantastic. All right. Now, what you can do with this in the future? I mean, if you have a fifth voice up there, you can ask that fifth voice maybe to sing a seventh, put a ninth in there, and you can maybe you can create a kind of harmonic series. You know, maybe when I get some more of you up, we could try that. It's, you know, don't worry.
I want to do this stuff.
That stuff happens all the time. It's a you know, like, you know, our brains stop functioning for us in ways that are really inconvenient, and they happen to me too. Don't worry.
I don't know.
All right, but it's, you know, but it's an awesome way to tune yourselves into an entirely different discipline. All right, thank you. Would you mind if we sang a little bit with Talis? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
Can we do F sharp?
You can do
Is
it.
that okay?
F sharp's better.
Is F sharp okay?
Yeah. It'll hurt less.
Lovely. That's beautiful. Well done. That's wonderful. Thank you. So look, just do the beginning again now, and rather than putting yourself in a position where you are physically, even if you're not using your eyes, where you're physically kind of in contact with each other, let go of that. And just go. You know, put yourselves in the right position so that you can definitely hear each other. You do want to be arced. Alicia, I think you need to come forward just a little bit so that you do feel like you are singing kind of across the group, sort of to here. And then, all right. So that looks like a good position for the four of you to sing in. But now, don't focus on anything other than the destination of your sound. So if your eyes are open, you're looking at this. All right. Let's just see what happens when you're all focused on the same spot. All right? Let's just try that again. So same rules apply. Even though your eyes are open now, just let the room do its thing, wait for that moment of perfect silence, and breathe and sing. Beautiful. I found that a very concerted and arresting presence for me. It's hard to describe what exactly was different about it, but the first time you sang it, I felt nervous for the four of you, and now I don't. Okay? All right. So everybody, we've successfully come in on this first F major or F sharp major chord, all right? So we're all happily singing, all right, and having a lovely time. What do we need to do now? What's the first thing that happens? After what's the next thing?
We're saying F.
Yeah. We've got to articulate the letter F. If, all right. So how do we do that? I mean, how do we know when the ensemble? How do we know how to get the together? How do we know?
Has to do with the tempo of the breath, doesn't it?
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Anything else? No, I mean it's really awkward this, and you're absolutely right, and that's definitely the easiest approach. I would also contend that if we're really, really listening, there is actually something that happens to the vowel that tells us that we're getting closer and closer and closer to it. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Let's all just find the pitch that you know, the voice part that works with us somewhere in ya ba ba ba, and let's, you know, I'll just bring us in, and we're just going to sing it and just see if anything happens to that vowel right before you get to the letter F. Okay? Ya ba da ba. 3, 4. Okay. Do it again. 3, 4. Is anything happening? Can you feel anything happening? Even slight. What is it? How do you describe it?
The lips seem to be constricting a little bit to make the F sound.
Don't they? Right? I mean, you know, actually there is a physical process that goes into the making of the letter F, which incorporates a change in the vowel. The vowel actually does have an evolutionary path that ends up in the letter F. Do you agree? You're right, and the lips get closer together, and that has an effect on the vowel. Like the vowel almost feels like it intensifies just before you get there. Now, right, so this happens in every note, virtually in every note that you will sing, like where there's a vowel change or a word change. That kind of that evolution in the vowel, the shape of the vowel, is the thing that raises you to a really sophisticated level, where you can actually, even though you're absolutely right, the pace of the breath can dictate the tempo, but actually, to get more detail, to get perfection in ensemble, if you can plug into those tiny little glides and moves and shapes that happen in our vowels, then you're really cooking as an ensemble. All right. So let's just try that. Get back into formation. Get back into the right formation. Get your energies pointing in the right direction. Wait for the silence. Breathe. Sing, and then let's look for this. All right, okay, so good on the if. Now what about love?
We might want.
That's an easier one than if.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and a pretty important word as well. You know, so we're about to get into the territory of not just how we communicate with each other, but how we communicate words now. Because I think that one of the things that one of the really important learning moments in an ensemble's life is how to use the words and the vowels that you shape to enhance your ensemble, to communicate with each other, but also in a way that actually makes you more communicative to your audience. You know, you actually breathe more life into your words. So I'm getting a nice sense of, there's a nice kind of, that's lovely, real contact support, breath support on that consonant, which is great. But it should be there on the L of love and the V of love. If you love me, if you love, and then can you hear that as well? You know, like, you know, the mouth has to close in order to contact to create that vibrant letter V with breath support. The mouth has to shape, and if we can just pick up on those movements, I'm aware of, like, how many times have you heard me say this kind of, I mean, because this is what we do in, you know, in our small choirs all the time. But you know, that maintaining of the breath support, that contact of the voice on your text is what I think makes your text come alive in that way. Let's just do it again. That was lovely. That was lovely. I mean, ye love was beautiful. Just take a risk with the V of love. Just to yeah.
How do you balance the listening and the responding to what the other people are doing with the personal responsibility of making that decision to, you know, sing the V that way or sing that vowel that way?
I think we just did this.
I don't know. That's it's tough, and you got to grapple with it, and you know, and you've got to play until you find the way of working that works. To be honest, I think if you try to compartmentalize the process like that, if you allow your intellect to kind of get in the way of the, you actually make problems for yourself. So try to eradicate that question from the record. You got stuck, didn't you? You got a little stuck there. You're just starting to slightly kind of put barriers between each other. Just reconnect with each other physically. Just come forward. Yeah, that's it. It's just make sure you've really got each other. All right. I don't know how else to say it. You've got to feel like I got you. All right. Do it again. Let's try it again. So without any kind of discussion, they made a communal decision to go faster then, right? You noticed that? Yeah, their pulse was faster, and it felt like, and they were all like, okay, this is happening, I'm on board. That was definitely observed. Anyone notice anything else?
When they went from,
The text was more convincing, it was more fluid, it was more story to the audience. There was a greater sense of communication. Each person had their own character, but the character was also ensemble.
Oh, lovely. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll publish that. That was that was great. Will you write the appendix to the book? That's fantastic.
I was just going to say the two constants, the N and the D in commandments, they like lined it up so well.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I will say that I really liked, which I didn't hear before, is Alicia, when you went to "And I Will Pray the Father," again you'll recognise this. I heard in the diphthong of I heard a shape to it. I heard a kind of kaleidoscope in that diphthong. And I will pray, and I will, and I want to encourage you the virtues of that as much as possible, because I know those of you who have voice lessons, a lot of you will be taught to sing the word I as R with a little E at the end. I. That's how you sing I. All right. But I want you to open up to the possibility that you can approach that diphthong in a different way without doing anything bad for your voice. All right. All of these vowels are legitimate singers' vowels, and they live on that kaleidoscope from R to E. And if you can get in a kind of steady, degree by degree way around that kaleidoscope from R to E, you get a beautiful, expressive I, as you just heard from the soprano. And for that matter, the fact that you also did it with the N of and, you made space for all of those consonants and then for the diphthong of I. It's a little tiny detail, but it makes such a difference. And it led to, because you were all listening to each other, you all did the same thing, right? It's a magical tool that we have at our disposal as an ensemble singer. So yay for that, and for all those things. Just for the sake of time, I would love to get some more folks up and singing now. And what we thought we might do is, if the four of you stay there, and if those of you who are now conducting fellows, if you now get up and join your voice part, and then let's just see then what we end up with in terms of voice distribution.
So if I can just add something.
Yeah, folks.
If I can just add some of the things I've been working or trying to get you to understand today. I don't want you to make sounds, but you can cause a choir to be sensitive to how they handle diction by what you do with your hands. I don't think you do with your hands the attack of the vowel, but you can certainly use your hands to color it. So we dealt with that. Anastasia, we were dealing with that a little bit. So just think about it, you know, the things we've unpacked today.
Okay, great. So, do we all know the first two parts of this piece from memory? Ya da da da. Let's just see what happens. So we're all going to actually let's just breathe and say ah twice first of all, all right? So now eyes closed. Eyes open. Energy at my hands. All right. All of your energy at my hands. Don't look anywhere else. Wait for the silence. Breathe. Say ah. Positive breath. Move the air around you with your breath. That's better. The signal needs to, you know, we need to be a little bit more alert to the signal when it moves. So just a little bit more kind of conviction in the flanks as well as in the middle, all right? That's better. Do it one more time. Much better. Right, I mean, that was perfect. That was wonderful. Right. Okay, so let's ya da da da. Let's try and sing and take your music as you know. If we have a good start, you keep singing and then you can use your music. All right, off you go. Fantastic, well done. I'm buying tickets. That's great. What thoughts on the floor? Anything? It can be complimentary or critical. Safe space.
I would ask them what did they sense didn't quite mesh.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I'd be curious about. What you perceived when things didn't kind of agree or lock up, because lots did. Anybody want to talk about that?
I ran out of air and I went to the TC on the campus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think in terms of syncing up, this is probably just a side effect of being like a dozen spread out over like 15 to 20 feet. I think if we were maybe looking inward a little bit more, we would be able to sync up our first note a little more effectively.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Sure. I don't. You know. I'm not. I don't want to be. You know. I don't want to be insistent on. You know. On the absence of eyes. I just feel like the less eye contact you use in practice, the more your senses are tuned in elsewhere. But yeah.
I feel like it sort of grew from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional because now I'm thinking about how I fit in with the other people singing the exact same things.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. All right. So that's a new set of listening challenges for you. And again, I'm not going to say. And that, which means you have to do this precise thing with your voice. You just have to, like basis, you now have a responsibility to make a section and then also to make, you know, to make 1 of 4. Just deal with it. Just listen until you have it.
I noticed you all did like breathe together as far as like singing up goes. I just noticed there was a little bit of what they call the death breath, where you weren't all confident that everyone was going to come in at the same time. So that kind of leads to this. Yeah, that can kind of
it is the death of this whole. If you breathe into a tense position, it is the death of this whole process. So I mean, so we had a little upset of ensemble between sopranos and tenors, and I will pray that which comes from a lack of understanding of how those two parts interrelate polyphonically. All right. So tenors, sopranos, can you have a quick look at that? Just where "and I will pray" happens. All right. So sopranos, if you can really plug into exactly how what you do moves in relation to the tenors, all right, then you can use their movement as your, as your guide, okay? Do you see what I mean? Good. So, obviously homophony is its own challenge with this music. Polyphony is a different one. You receive the music and respond to it not simultaneously. It's a different challenge, but it's one that through this magical little tiny piece, it's one that one that we're discovering at the same time. Let's go again. Ya da da da. If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will break the law, and I will break the laws, and he shall give you Okay, beautiful. All right. Okay. Any more observations from the floor? Yeah.
Because we didn't really talk about blend, but yet we're all good singers, we sing our best singing when we sing with the most resonance. And,
Yeah.
and it's resonance when all are committed to the concept of it that really enacts blend without even a trying. And so we don't have to think about vowel, well, we do have to come to an agreement, but there's some school of thought which tries to go for the pure vowel and then resonance, rather than trying to manipulate the vowel that like everybody can match. But you just go for resonance, and that's what brings the blend in.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting point because you're absolutely right, but of course it also depends on, we can do very strange things with our vowels in the pursuit of resonance.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a lot of singers, when they have an R vowel on the page, you can sort of hood the sound up into a sort of upper resonating space,
Mm-hmm.
so that it sounds an up. Oh, I found a nice resonance there. But it's pretty hard to kind of plug into as another singer and go, oh yeah, I can work with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it might not be a disaster. You just don't know until you try it, right? Are you singing alto?
Mm-hmm.
Just sing the first phrase.
Okay.
And I'll do that.
Sure.
If you love me, keep my commandments. Right, that was fun. I was looking for the placement of the vowel command, and I immediately saw that you're going somewhere quite bright.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking very carefully at the mouth there in order to make my own decisions. But we could go another way with vowels. I'm sort of veered off the point that you're making here, except to say that that's absolutely right. The most important part of what you've just said, I think, is that when we're singing in ensembles, you have to think positively about the sound that you're making. You have to think, forgive me if I just stand here for a moment, your sound, it is not a question of hearing these sounds, receiving them here, and then putting your sound here to a point where it feels nice to you, all right? The way the ensemble sound works is, think of it like a sort of glitter ball, like a sort of semi-buoyant disco ball. That's right in the middle of all of you, and it's here. And that this disco ball is kept alive, is kept airborne by the energy of your singing. All right? It has to be a positive approach to the space, a positive approach to the resonance, to the sound. You actually have to work quite hard to create that vividness in the sound. Even if you're singing softly, you have to work incredibly hard at that soft singing. I mean, like a good image for soft singing is, like a loud whisper. So like the kind of energy you would put into a loud whisper doesn't necessarily need to be that breath, but whatever. Just think of the energy that you would use to, if I stood 200 yards away and I said, tell me what you had for breakfast, but you can only whisper, right? Just think about the energy that you would put into saying, Pop-Tart, Do you know what I mean? Work hard with all of the energy that you can use that's appropriate for the music, loud, soft, whatever, to keep that disco ball alive, and you won't go far wrong. And this is something that I've felt again and again and again, and I'll use that example of the Tallis Scholars as well, because I'm sure there are some Tallis Scholars fans in here, and I, as a massive fan of that group, had this experience of singing with them twice. Deep into my 40s when I'm kind of past it, so I can't quite do the sort of flexible, elastic things with my voice that I used to be able to do, and so I actually found the whole process quite difficult and intimidating. But the thing that I came away most was, my goodness, they sing with so much, it's really lots and lots of force and commitment and muscle in the singing, and you get to the end of the concert and you're exhausted. And you don't necessarily associate that Tallis Scholars sound with something that would be exhausting, right? It feels ethereal. It's not in its production. It is muscle and sinew and sweat. It's great. It's great. That's a great feeling. Can I just stand in amongst you? Let's just do it again, all right? Every time I've stood and watched it, I've felt an energy from the sopranos not to breathe at that point, and then you breathe. Then that was curious. which I wasn't really listening to you. I was just kind of going, oh yeah, we don't breathe there. So I just sort of drove us through. That was curious. My mistake. All right, sorry. I should have responded to that. There was a different kind of thing happening, and I should have responded to it. I apologise. Let's just do it again. I'm just trying to get a sense of what it feels like to be in the middle of you. If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will bring the and he shall So are you feeling that relationship with the sopranos where it's necessary? In case I put it off, I said alto's basses. You've got to try to hear the sound of the basses in your own voice, like feel the movement, and I to sort of feel that interrelationship of those simple polyphonic parts, and you'll make something really beautiful. It's gorgeous singing in the middle of you. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. All right, there's something that's bothering me. Is it bothering you? This little excerpt we're singing, the very last syllable, is really bothering me. Is it bothering anyone else? Mm.
Comforter.
Yes.
Comforter.
Yeah. I keep hearing comforter, and I'm not feeling very comforted. So it's obviously not easy to do this in the way that the music is written, with these arbitrary things called bar lines, which adorn these modern editions. But we mustn't go the comforter just because it's a landing point. We can do much better than that, can't we? Yeah. Maybe take the energy away from that, put it into the M and the F of comforter, so that it really feels like it's. do it one more time. Let's do it one more time. All right, so let's really listen to each other in your pairs of voices, okay? Let me just say one thing, because I do feel there's tension at the moment of delivery of the sound, and I think, you know, like certain things we've experienced are making it, you know, because last time there was an alto voice that came in earlier than the rest of us, which isn't necessarily wrong. It just happens. So we just need to just plug into what we mean by this breath process. Who talked about death? What do you call it?
Death breath.
Death breath. Okay, I mean that's, you know.
I didn't know that term.
No, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously, you know that doesn't sound like a good thing, and it isn't. Death breath, no. But that is you know, allowing tension to bleed into your body as you get to the top of your breath. But also actually chasing the breath out before it's ready to come out is also a problem. So can we just think of this as a kind of athletic move? So basically, breath comes out of you like a bowling ball comes out of your hand. Do you see what I mean? And you know, and that this is the breath in, and that is the breath out. Or if you like, this is the breath in, this is the golf swing sort of, that is the breath out, right? This is the breath in, that is the breath out. It happens with that kind of natural rhythm. It just goes, yeah, you know what I mean? Try to feel that kind of, that athletic process in the intake and the exhalation of the breath. See if you can find a natural rhythm based upon that principle, right? One more time. Yeah. Unlucky. If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will break the fault, I will break the fault, and he shall give you Yeah, I like it. That was lovely. We got a little scared of that last syllable, and you know, and the music continues. But that's you know, it really does feel like I'm standing, you know, like I'm a limb in an organism, right? And that's, you know, and that's ultimately what we want to feel like in Ensemble. That, you know, that there's a single brain, and you know, and many legs. So why don't those of you just to finish? Why don't those of you who are, you know, who are guest singers for this, why don't you now go? And those of you who are here as conductors, why don't you just sing it through now? So how does that make us balance? We have a single spine.
There's 3 tenors, 2 basses, 2 altos.
Then, why don't you sing? And then I think it's just give you a better, I don't think it's a fight. All right, just enjoy it. And maybe we might even go on.
Do you need one? I came away with 2.
There we go. Multiplication of the loaves and fishes.
And I will break the well done, well done. That was great. Well done, well done. One or two of you, who don't know it, we're grasping for things there, and at those points, it's impossible not to be in your own, in your own world and listening to yourself. Then, of course. But like, if you can take on these tools as intuitively and instinctively as possible in your work in this environment, I think, you'll definitely make yourselves more flexible, useful, ensemble-oriented singers, which is a craft that we all have a degree of respect for, given that we're choral singers and the skill sets are so similar. But I also think, much more crucially, I think, as conductors, the more that you can take in about the process that your singers are going through, about the things that they can be thinking, and the things that they can be thinking, in order to advance their art, the more that you can be embodying and thinking about those things, the more that you can confidently talk to them about it, the better conductors you'll be. All right. Okay.